let's do Iran for a minute. So Iran, we spoke about yesterday, Iran has started to restart parts of its program after a relentless onslaught. So the United States first threw the international system into turmoil by pulling out of this agreement about a year ago in a way that was, this should start at the beginning of this video, that was completely illogical, that was contradicted by every single piece of evidence that the deal was working, that all members of the deal were following along with it. And in the past several months, with the deployment of a fleet on the Strait of Hormuz, as well as aggressively, when they talk even about getting tough with China as an example, they're talking about targeting the Chinese-Iranian economic relationship. And I have no doubt, following Paul Pillars, a former CIA analyst, that the game of Bolton and Pompeo is to try to agitate Iran into making one step that they could use as an excuse for war. This clip from friend of both shows, friend of mine, Mike Hanna at Al Jazeera, documents some of the global reaction to this. And it starts in the UK where Pompeo is visiting. Really striking and really worth noting that, of course, the French and the Chinese, who you'll hear from as well, are rejecting this. But this far-right Tory government also wanted to preserve the deal.
The US Secretary of State arrives at 10 Downing Street for talks with the British Prime Minister. The staunch US ally deeply alarmed by the Iranian announcement and making clear it continues to oppose the US decision to pull out of the 2015 nuclear deal.
Iran must never be able to acquire a nuclear weapon. It's no secret that we have a different approach on how best to achieve that. The UK has continued to support the nuclear deal, which is a key achievement of the global non-proliferation architecture, because we believe it's in our shared security interests.
Mike Pompeo insisting differences over the Iran agreement would not impact on the transatlantic relationship.
We're on the same side. We're on the side of values-driven democracy. We're on the side of freedom. We're on the side of creating a nation for the Iranian people where they can have religious freedom and they can have a democracy.
But other signatories to the nuclear agreement are adamant the US must be held accountable should Iran follow through on its threat.
Cela fait maintenant plusieurs mois.
For a few months now, the deal that was signed in Vienna to keep Iran's nuclear activities in check has been undermined. Because exactly a year ago, the U.S. decided to pull out from the deal and not respect it.
China approves of the way that Iran has thoroughly carried out its duty to comprehensively fulfill the agreement. We oppose the unilateral sanctions implemented by the U.S. and its so-called long-arm jurisdiction.
This is a war that, of course, is going to get pushed by Saudi Arabia, by Israel, by the Emirates, by the prime forces. Those are the prime forces, along with Trump, of instability and danger in the Middle East right now. And obviously, I mean, it should go without saying, of course, Mike Pompeo, who's literally celebrating the acceleration of a global climate crisis. Mike Pompeo, who works hand in glove to support the Saudi endless crimes and murders and savagery that the U.S. is supporting in Yemen every single day, in spite of the efforts of Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna and others in Congress, right? So obviously him talking about the rights situation in Iran is a disgusting, absurd joke.
There's a new sort of fascist tactic that Pompeo exhibits there, which is to act as if there is no disagreement, and that you just have all the outward signs that, oh, we all agree here. I agree with Jeremy Hunt that we're on the same side. Like
Jeremy Hunt specifically, in his most polite way, again, far-right Tory government, right-wing defense minister or foreign minister, saying, we supported the goal of not having Iran proliferate was best fulfilled by the agreement that you guys are destroying.
And Pompeo just acts
like
That's the
fundamental right.
It's so scary when they do that.
Right. There's no disagreement here except for the fundamental disagreement that my counterpart just articulated.
And they know that Hunt's not going to be like, wait a second, Mike. Right. I'm telling you, we got a problem here, because they're not going to stop the press conference that way. It's stagecraft.
Precisely. And I will say on this sort of, Pompeo's competent. I mean, he's one of the few people around who's at that nexus of, no daylight between him and a Donald Trump in terms of avarice, extremism. He might also have overlap with Pence in terms of a fanatical, dangerous religious worldview. But this guy knows how to do. I'm tired of it. And it's only on our side that we talk about people who get stuff done. They don't really use that rhetoric on the side that gets stuff done, unfortunately. But Mike Pompeo, he's an operator and definitely one of the most dangerous people on earth today. Let's continue then, actually, because this is also Mike Pompeo. I mean, it's not enough to try to instigate what would be, if we had war with Iran, I would say, at the very least, a lot of the kind of meaningless bullshit and nonsense and catfights and ridiculousness that people get into all day might be put into stark perspective, because I don't even want to contemplate. Like, you already have a slaughterhouses in Yemen and Syria. You still have major instability in Iraq, and that conflict cost millions of lives and displaced millions of people because of the U.S. invasion. If you had a military engagement with Iran, I don't even want to put that out there, honestly. You need to seriously contemplate how catastrophically bad that is.
If that leads to a world war the way we're at
That
now,
is one of the only
the recipe for
melodramatic,
totalitarianism.
Really. And it's also one of the only melodramatic scenarios where I could say, like, you know what? I actually could see a path where that could lead to some type of kind of broader, conflict. But even if it didn't, the amount, first of all, obviously goes without saying, but of course this is no concern to these people. You'll kill an enormous amount of innocent people in Iran. But the Iranians, while on one hand, the threat of Iran is ludicrous. Iran doesn't even spend the most of its military on anybody in the Middle East, and they're no threat to the United States. Anybody that would say otherwise is either, mentally ill or lying or having fever dreams. But they do know how to operate in terms of, training guerrillas, in terms of fighting different types of insurgencies, and even in Iraq, in a disorganized way that was splintered by all sorts of factional variables. There were times where we were facing Shia militias or Sunni groups without any kind of centralized command structure, and a government of Saddam Hussein that had not a huge base of support, certainly not the amount that the Iranians do. Not to mention no international respect, which the Iranians do have under Rouhani and Zarif to some extent. They were able to cause havoc and kill a huge amount of U.S. troops. If that happens wow. Okay.